Good evening. How's everybody? Good. Levi's ready to go. Okay. We are recording. All right. Good evening, Dr. Barnes. Dr. Barnes, can you hear me yet? I've unmuted you.
Yes, you can hear. I can hear you now.
There we go. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Good. Excited about tonight. See what we're going to get. I've been reading through these presentations.
Same here. Same here.
This is going to be fun. This is my favorite part. My favorite part. I'll have to contain myself. Oh, man.
Evening.
Oh, no. Another miserably hot day.
Yes,
All
it
right.
was.
Terrible. What time is that? William's dressed up. He must have been at work today.
Yes, sir. Hope y'all doing good.
Looks nice. Feel good. William makes me feel bad. I didn't have to wear a necktie tonight.
It's hot though.
Gosh, it's hot today.
Yeah.
Miserable, miserable, miserable. All right. Beverly, you there? Beverly, are you there? I guess not. She said she wanted to go first tonight.
Oh, that's right.
Beverly, can you hear me?
We do, Dr. Lamb, our group.
So y'all want to go first?
Yes.
All right. I was hoping Dr. Sumner would come on. We'd get an update on Ocracoke, what's going on. NCAT's got a place out there. I was hoping to hear an update on how well they're doing. So, but let me go ahead and get cranked up here. All right. Okay. Let me get something to drink. We'll get started. Well, I've got 7 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. I see we're recording, so we're ready to go. Thank you all for joining me this evening. This is MELS 603 for the fall of 19. This is week 3, case study 1. I want to look at our weekly schedule. And so you should be in peer review phase of task 1 of the OMA. Should be starting to submit your final revised OMAs to assignment Dropbox in Blackboard. They've all been good. Thank you for those. You'll start next week. You'll start your draft of task 2. Please remember, again, don't reinvent the wheel. I know all of you did academic professional growth plans last semester in the APTEL. So all you have to do is take APTEL tasks 1, 2, and 3. Take all the APTEL language off of it and references. Put it in the sections where it goes in OMA task 2 and you're done. It's a simple copy and paste. Should take you no more than an hour to complete task 2 of the OMA. Now, if you did something other than academic last semester, then you're going to have to start from scratch. It's going to take you a week to do it. But if you did academic as you were supposed to, then you're in good shape on your your OMA Task 2 because it's just the first 3 tasks of the APTEL. Please take the title of the APTEL headings off of it. It confuses the graders. So do that. So this should be a really short week and easy. You can move right on into your discussion boards, catch up on some of those because it'd be time to start looking to observe a student due process. You might could even get to that this week. Also, next week, we're going to look at, Seth has them all ready to go. So we're going to look at your competency folios specifically next week when we meet and do tort liability. Don't forget that we're going to do that next week. So on to the evening. Let me close that and see if there was anything else that I need to do. All right, so tonight was case study 1. You had your materials, the lesson plan, the role of the principal, which is all the duties and responsibilities of the principal, and the 4 ethical concerns. You would apply all of those to this case. The most salient of those was obviously the first one, which is to grade and classify pupils. Whose responsibility is it to grade and classify? Not teachers, it would be the principal by law. So this lands squarely on the principal's desk because this is your call. You can overrule whatever the teacher did. You can support what the teacher did, but your decision needs to be based first on law and then on ethics. The ethics piece are for the school staff, the administration and the teachers. So we first have to apply the rule of law, and then we have to look at the ethical concern when we're looking at these cases. So we know that the reason why the principal has to deal with this is because the law says so. So this is the principal's job to do that. It also speaks to retention. Also what comes into this is due process. 0 tolerance suspensions or expulsions are illegal. And what that means is if you do this, we give you this punishment, we expel you no matter, or exclude you no matter what the circumstances are, we give you that exclusion or expulsion regardless of the facts of the case. That's an absence of due process. So 0 tolerance suspensions are illegal. We're going to cover that when we get to, and more in depth, when we get to the disciplinary data reporting manual, which covers everything disciplinary related, all the laws and policies. There's one manual from DPI that has it all. We will cover that in depth a little bit later. And so we know that 0 tolerance exclusions, which failing for the year is an exclusion. And even if you offer a redress, which would be an alternative placement or summer school, it's still illegal to do that. You can't do that as a blanket statement. All right, so we know that. We understand the principal makes a decision on the final grade based on law and ethics. We know that 0 tolerance expulsions are illegal. We know that a class assignment can't count, class assignments in aggregate can't count more than 10% of the yearly grade. One individual class assignment usually doesn't count for more than 1 point on a final grade. The teacher manipulated the grading scale in opposition to state law and board policy to make one class assignment count more than half of the yearly grade. We know that's not legal. Going in, we know that can't be true. And so the board policy in that district said that the teacher may fail the kid on that assignment, but not for the year, on that assignment. Now, they may give the kid a chance to make it up. There may be other punishment. There may be something that you do disciplinary-wise. That's up for debate what you do. But one of the options is not to fail for the year. You can only fail that yearly assignment. That weekly or daily assignment is all that you can fail. And even if you got a 0 on that assignment, it would make less than 1 point difference in your final grade if we followed the state plan and the local board plan for grading. So we would have to say that failing for the year would be capricious. What is the definition of capricious? That's when we give more punishment than the rules allow for. Arbitrary is when William and I are caught in the back smoking behind the gym, and they let William go on back to class, and they take me on and shoot me. That would be arbitrary. We got caught doing the same things. He got no punishment. I got the ultimate. That would be arbitrary. Capricious is when you catch a kid cheating on a class assignment, you fail him for the year. That would be pretty much the definition of capricious on the academic side. So we know those things going in. If we've done our reading and we've done our homework, we understand those things. Some of the arguments I see is, well, we always have to support teachers. And that falls under the category when your mother told you when you were a kid, if your brother jumped off the roof, would you jump off with him? No, I'm not losing my house for you. So the notion that we always have to support teachers, that's a fallacy. That's not written into the law. It's not written into the ethical code. The law says we follow the law always, and the ethics of our profession say that we do the right thing for students. So that's where the ethical paradigm of profession comes in. We can't support that teacher even though she goes to her union or does whatever. The reason she did that because she knew that she's trying to intimidate the principal. Now, the facts of this case in terms of Bobby's relatives and all those things in baseball, that's just there to confuse you. That has nothing to do with the case. This case is simply about due process, capricious, zero tolerance, making sure, and the ethics of profession. Those are the four motivating factors in this case. Let's see how close y'all got to those four. So we're going to start with Beverly's first. And let me see, I've got these queued up here. Is this the right one?
Yeah.
Carrie and Beverly and LaToya. All right, so they did case study 1. Can y'all see that on the screen?
Yes.
Excellent. So somebody start out, and I'll click the slides for you.
Okay, so I'm going first, and Sean and Carrie and Laura and LaToya are also are part of this presentation. And I'm just going to give us some of the background and just the facts of the case. And then Sean's going to take it over.
Good.
All right, so some of the facts that we know was that Jane, the teacher, recognized that Bobby had a similar case, had a similar social studies project. Bobby submitted the work that was an exact replica for his brother that was marked 2 years ago. Bobby admitted to the wrongdoing after being confronted about it. Bobby was required to attend summer school, and the summer was worth half of his grade in the class and received a score of 0 for cheating. In the handbook, as part of the school's policy to maintain standards of personal honesty, cheating of any kind may require failing a grade by the teacher. So that was stated in the handbook that they were all aware of.
But everybody understands that's on the assignment.
Right.
The individual assignment. Okay, got it.
All right. So some more facts is Ricky thinks that because Bobby's uncle, Mr. Michaels, is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, that gives him the school money and is on the Board of Education, that Bobby should be given a pass of sorts. Like that's a reason or excuse to give him a pass. The teammates were counting on him as far as scholarships in the school selection. And the superintendent did not give much advice besides to be careful to the principal when the principal asked him about it. The due processes of students, and it states in our book that says that before administering corporal punishment, school officials should develop, publish, and disseminate rules that provide students and their parents with adequate notice that specific violations may result in corporal punishment. And so the student should have been notified and should be notified. The student should give opportunity to respond, informal hearing, and the presentation of the issue, and the evidentiary measures have to be taken.
All right, it's important to remember here, there's 2 types of due process.
Right.
There is substantive and procedural. Substantive is the system that your district has written in the steps of due process. That's your substantive due process. What does your district say that the child is owed in terms of his due process rights? And then procedural is what did you as the administrator do? Did you follow those steps? And so when you get sued, it may be on the basis of substantive that the district's policy, due process policy, did not afford the student all the rights that it should have, or you may be sued on the basis of, although the district policy is laid out step by step and is adequate to provide due process protections for the student, that you as the person who conducted that process did not follow all those steps. So when we say due process, make sure we understand it means two things: the actual process itself, and did you follow that process? Substantive, procedure. Okay?
All right, so we are going to continue with what should the principal do, or what should the principal have done. And so what we talked about was the ethical issue with why the teacher decided that one assignment was a pass or fail grade. So we really talked about that. We Zoomed about it on Monday, and we really talked about why that would be and how that would play out. So we decided that the principal should review the grading practices of the teacher, meet with the teacher and ask, why did you have one assignment that essentially dictated the student's whole direction? We decided that there should be a due process hearing with Bobby and his mom to understand why Bobby plagiarized. He had admitted he did plagiarize, but that's really, again, not what the case is asking about. But in our opinion, we decided that the teacher obviously was in the wrong here because of her unethical grading policy. So we came up with some questions and said, was this a problem all year long? Was he cheating? Is this a pattern? The principal should ensure that Bobby signed the student handbook, even though essentially that doesn't matter in this case. But we felt that the principal did do a good job of notifying the proper channels. He asked the superintendent for advice. We also felt that the superintendent's advice wasn't really advice, and it was more of a directed suggestion of what he really wanted. We felt that he said, tread lightly, essentially do as I say, but not in that way so that he couldn't get in trouble. And then from there, we decided to talk about the differences in slide 6 between arbitrary and capricious. So in the next slide,
all right, let me stop you before you go to the next slide. Number one on this, the principal should meet with Jane Barton to ask why this one assignment was worth a pass or fail grade more than 50% of the final grade. That's actually the question the superintendent's going to ask the principal. Why do you have a teacher who's doing this when this is not an ethical problem? This is a legal problem. You're not allowed to do that. Class assignments cannot count more than 10% of the final grade. Heck, the EOC and the EOG can't count more than 30. How can one class assignment count more than 50 when the state exam can only count up to 30 and may count as little as 20? And the law is that you can't count, the class assignments can't count more than 10%. So that's the question the superintendent's going to ask you as principal. Because again, who's responsible to grade and classify students according to the law?
The principal.
Not the teacher, the principal. So this one gets a little close to home here. This is on you, not on her. You should know what her grading policy is. All right, excellent. Let's move on to arbitrary and capricious.
All right, so then we decided that the punishment that was given to Bobby did not fit the crime that was committed.
That's correct.
We felt that it was a violation of a zero tolerance policy issue.
It is.
And that if the district were to go to court, that would essentially lose in court because they violated the law.
Yeah, you'd lose your house quickly.
Correct. And so we figured that, the way that this works nowadays is the school district would probably just settle.
Oh yeah.
And take the loss on it.
Oh yeah.
Because they essentially violated the law. And when our Zoom group met on Monday, this was the majority of the time that was spent, because we were essentially talking about how if this one assignment was worth more than half the grade, pass or fail, we agreed that there should be some sort of a punishment for Bobby.
Oh, yeah.
That was not the punishment. So we
Yeah,
felt
exactly. Perfect. That's very good. Now, you need 2 more bullets on here. You don't know this, but I'll just go ahead and tell you what your other 2 bullets are going to be. You're right all the way through these 4. You're dead on. The 5th bullet is you're going to get sued individually as the principal in a civil case by the parent. Even though the district settles, they're going to settle. They're smart enough to settle. That will not absolve you of a suit, a civil suit on the standard of capricious. That doesn't absolve you from that. If you uphold this uphold this expulsion of this kid, that will not absolve you from the parent, even though the school district said, "Oh no, this is a loser. We're not going." That won't absolve you from a lawsuit that you will lose. And the last bullet that needs to be on this is understanding that the school district will not provide you legal counsel when you get sued civilly. You're on your own. Now, totally unrelated in terms of the context, but a court ruled last week that the clerk in Kentucky who denied the gay people the marriage license and everybody supported her and all these conservative groups, she's now, the courts have ruled that she can be sued individually. The same as this case. She's now going to be a party to a civil suit going after her personal assets. That happens quite frequently. When you are a professional staff and you're paid to uphold the law, you can't let your personal feelings get involved. And if you do, now the state of Kentucky is not going to be liable. They've already paid their money and got out from under. But now it's on that lady. And so that's what would happen in a case like this. The school district would make a financial settlement with this family and make it go away. It would never get to court, but then they would not provide you any legal counsel when you had to go. And that would even if you by some miracle you would prevail or get a prayer for judgment or deferred or something, it wouldn't matter. The legal bills would ruin you for life.
Okay, and then we talked about the justice of this case with fairness and justice, the differences between arbitrary and capricious, that metal detectors are, that they're legal in there. But when we really talked about it, the whole part of justice on the next slide, really just our conversation talked about how something didn't add up.
Right.
And we were just essentially saying, that the school, essentially the principal allowed it to happen, which is the worst part about this, that the school didn't follow the law because the principal ultimately assigns those grades. And it did violate that zero tolerance policy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're asking some questions about, was the process behind it fair to Bobby? Was it fair to all parties? Was it fair even to every other student there as well? Because it's not just about Bobby, but if it happened to any other student, obviously then there's an issue. It should have been addressed from the principal standpoint from day one.
Mm-hmm.
But there should be something obviously done about the teacher's grading policy. There's obviously got to be some sort of justice for plagiarizing, just not failing the entire grade.
Mm-hmm.
That was really the justification there that we had.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna
So as we move into the next slide, I'm going to pose a question here. What about other students? Are we going to? I mean, we understand that Bobby's probably you know, a little devil. But that falls under kids that need love the most, deserve it the least, under that clause for public educators. But what about other students that witness this? What would their takeaway be? I mean, they know Bobby's probably devils them as well. But what would this do to your school culture and climate? Let's step away from the case just a second and look at a bigger picture here. If this teacher were allowed to do this to Bobby, what do you think would happen with the rest of the students in that building, in terms of their feeling of safety and security, and that school's a safe place every day?
Well, especially because he is well connected in the district, they would probably think that he's being made an example of.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I would assume, because he's well connected, he's probably fairly popular, and it's going to hurt the culture of the school. It's going
Well, sure it will.
to not trust the administration.
That's exactly right.
Teachers are going to then have more problems with students, because it's going to be an us versus them mentality.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. The culture of schools has to be a we culture, has to be an us culture. It can't be a us versus them.
Right.
That's one of the things when you go out and look at schools. Do you see a partnership? Do you see that we're all in this together? But when you step outside, and this teacher obviously wanted to make an example out of Bobby, if you see things like this happen in a school and they're allowed to stand, because everybody's family may not be as well connected as Bobby. Do you think that this could happen? What about a kid who's not well connected and his parents won't pitch a fit? You think this could happen? And so one of the things that we see especially in high poverty schools or low performing schools is a us against them mentality. I'm not saying it's because of things like this, but usually it is. This is what causes that division. This is what leads to low performing schools. It's a battle every day. The battle line is drawn, and the fight is joined every minute. Rather than us working together for students to be successful, it's how do I survive the day? That's what these kinds of things lead to. So there's bigger issues than just policy and law here. There's also school culture issues that go along with it. All right, picking back up with slide number 8. I think we've covered all of those. All right, so what is justice in this case for this group? What should happen to Bobby?
We kind of talked about in our schools currently, it's a level 1 offense.
Mm-hmm.
That would be possibly a day of in-school suspension,
Right.
but that's it. Like,
Yay.
not the grade.
You go to your code of conduct. See, that's the part of this I've been waiting all this time for. If we went to our code of conduct, it would not allow that we would be able to exclude a kid for a year for cheating. Our code of conduct, and I'll pull one up right quick. I know I've got one in here. Let's see where I have it. Let's see. I think, did we look at one? No, we didn't. I should have it right about here. Yay! I've got one in here. And so if we look at Getting close. I'm looking for faults. What am I looking for? Dr. Barnes, you ought to have to help me here. I'm looking for that section on being dishonest or I should have already had this queued up. I did. There we go. Cheating. It's under misrepresentation. There it is. Most you can do is 5 days out of school suspension. That's the most you can do. And first offense goes on the minimum is for first offense, maximum is for repeated offenses. Like you said, when you do your due process, you'd find out if this is the first time he's cheated, can't even suspend him. Most you can do is make him make up his work and do ISS. That's the most you can give him under Tier 1 is ISS and make him make up the work. If he's cheated before, the most you can do is give him 5 days out of school suspension. How in the world could you fail him for the year? That's a year exclusion. So again, capricious, the definition is you give more punishment than the law allows. This is the law. This is the handbook for the district. So what would you do to Bobby if it's a first offense? I'd do what it says. I'd give him, make up the work and give him a day of in-school suspension. If he's done it before, I'd make him make up the work and give him 5 days out of school. This is plug and play, folks. This doesn't require a whole lot of thought process here, other than to know the law that the teacher has manipulated and has broken the law. Now, better question here is this. Here's the better question. What are we going to do? What are we going to do about the teacher? This is back in your court again, administrators. What are you going to do about a teacher? I mean, I'm the superintendent. I'm asking you why is this going on in your building and you don't know? That's going to be a tough conversation to have. So what conversation am I going to be having with that teacher? What would you do to the teacher? What would you do about, not just what would you do about her grading policy, what would you do about the teacher?
Well, like when we talked about it, one of the things we talked about was that how did the principal not know that this was the grading practice?
But she may have just done it on the fly for this one. She may have just decided because of Bobby.
Published to the students, and when was that decision made? So I think that the conversation you have with that teacher is help me understand how this aligns with our school policy.
Exactly. I didn't see this in the course outline or syllabus. It's not in our teacher handbook on the grading policy for the district. How did this come about? Obviously, if this had been published and I'd seen it, this wouldn't have went. How did this come about? How is it that although the district policy says this is how much punishment you can give, this is the grading scale for the district, how is it that more than half of the final grade in your class for the entire year was based on this one class assignment? How did that happen? And I don't care how many union reps they have with them. That's the question. I'm allowed to ask that.
Well, as the principal, like in that conversation, I think it would be really important to be blunt and say, if you want me to support you, you have to follow school policy. You have to follow district policy, or I cannot support you. And I want to be able to support you as a teacher. But if you're not following policy, you don't give me a choice.
Exactly. That's exactly the content of that conversation. You don't give me a choice. If you don't follow policy, I can only support you if you're following policy, because my number one responsibility is follow all law and policy. That's what they hired me for. I don't make law and policy as the principal of the school. My job is to enforce it, period. It doesn't matter if I like it or dislike it. That's immaterial. I may think Bobby Annie's uncle ought to go fly a kite. That's immaterial. That doesn't matter. When we get to one of these cases later this semester on the LGBTQ, I mean, that's one that people, oh, well, we can do that. No, we follow the law. It doesn't matter. And so the content of the conversation is help me understand how a class assignment counts more than twice as much as the state exam. I got to know that. Show me the math. Got to show you work on this one. You can't just write the answer down. I got to see the work on this math problem. How did we get there? What would you do? Would you take action against the teacher?
I think it depends on how that conversation goes. If it was something that I didn't know about and it was in the beginning syllabus, I think that's on me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
If it was not in the syllabus and this is something that came up all of a sudden, as I think it was Beverly who said that in our conversation, that teacher may need an action plan. It may be something that, like, you're breaking school policy, here's the action plan, this needs to be corrected.
There you go. That's exactly what has to happen in this case. If this teacher did this, manipulated the grading system, specifically for this kid, for this incident, and it was not filed in a course syllabus, and even if it was filed in the syllabus, it contradicts district and state policy. But if you didn't catch it as a principal, and it's in there, that's on you. But if it's not in there, this at least requires an action plan.
Dr.
At the very least.
Shouldn't this be on the summative exam, also summative evaluation?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely, you have to. It's your role to protect students. Period. That's what you're there for. That's the ethics of profession. We go back, and it's also the ethics of care and social justice. Again, sometimes kids that need love the most deserve it the least. In this case, Billy's a handful, but he's well connected. What if Billy were a handful and he weren't well connected? It's up to you. You may be the only justice in that kid's life. You can't allow Billy to be taken advantage of by the system. That's why they put you there. Loyalty and trust, I think we've gone through all of these. The superintendent, he just wanted it to go away. That generally happens a lot, but that should not, you can't let that color what you do. You have to follow the law and the ethical piece. If you decided that, that this case was legal and just and sided with the teacher, and, then the superintendent would just, that's just part of it. But obviously it wasn't. Let's see. And then professional cannot be upheld. Very good. I want to switch gears here quickly before we go to, I'm going to stop my share. Before we go any further, we've got a specialist with us tonight, Dr. Lisa Barnes. This is her line of work. I want to go to Dr. Barnes for her thoughts in this case. Let me unmute her. If I may have to unmute herself.
All right, got it.
There you go.
All right, so that's the part I was waiting for. I was waiting to hear from them as to what they would do and how they would handle the situation. And I was glad to hear her say that the key was you're going to be very upfront with this teacher and let her know that what you did was illegal and I cannot uphold a decision that you have made without my permission and I had no idea about it. And like you said, depending on how that situation went, that conversation goes, will definitely depend on whether or not this continues to employee relations or if it's addressed at the school, and then that's the end of it. But either way, the documentation has got to be put there. And like I think another gentleman said, that you can either do that in the evaluation, but something needs to be written up immediately to let that teacher know exactly what happened. And then another meeting needs to be taking place with the parent and the student, not necessarily to say that the teacher was wrong, but that it has been addressed and what you're going to do to remedy that situation.
What you're going to do to remediate it. Dr. Barnes just made a great point. One of the activities I have you doing real soon is go to HR in your district and talk to them about what employee assistance is available, and the reason why is for cases like this. Not only, as William said, this would be in the summative. Yes, it would be in an action plan. This may require an immediate referral to employee assistance as well. It's according to how it goes at that conference. If this teacher acknowledges that this wasn't the right thing to do, and realizes the legal and ethical dilemma here that you put the school in, if she realizes that, you may be able to just do an action plan and address the summative. If she's still as militant as she is, in terms of wanting to bring her rep in, or in-serve rep or whoever, or union rep, then this is going to have to go to EA immediately, employee assistance. Probably going to have to be a suspension. That's probably the first thing that's going to happen. I mean, if you have this, sit down and have this critical conversation with her and she doesn't get it at all, or, is still screaming and yelling and where's my lawyer? We're going to have to probably go to a suspension with pay and go to EA immediately. And this is what you would refer. This is when you would call them and say, here's the situation. Where do we go? And so that's why I have you finding out who is that person in your district. Now, their first job you get may not be in that same district, but you need, at least that there is a person that deals with that, because this is the kind of thing. What tells me that this teacher's going to go all the way to the wall on this one is she's already, before she assigned the grade, she'd already called her union rep. So she's some kind of crazy already. How much of a crazy we're going to find out at that conference, but I'm betting it's not going to go well. And so this is one of those that Ron Thompson used to call a come to Jesus meeting. We now refer to as critical conversations, but it's not going to go well because you're going to have to explain to her that you're not going to support her and but what she's done is illegal, and there's going to have to be some recompense on her part. That not only is Billy not going to get failed for the year, she's going to get punished for her behavior because she's broke the law and violated the ethical standard of the school and school district. We can't let that slide. That can't go unnoticed. That's your job to notice those. I think Dr. Sumner is on the road tonight. She's with us. And so, but Dr. Barnes, thank you for that. And thank you for reminding me. Yeah, we'd have to go to EA with this one more than likely. But again, it goes back to the substance of that conference that we have. Excellent job. All right, we're going to move through. Let me go back to my share here. Get to share my screen again. Share. All right, excellent job on that one. All right, who we got here? Who we got from Tiffany, Caroline, Allison, and LaCarna? Any of those folks with us tonight? Look through. Okay, they've submitted theirs, so we'll pass on that one. Let me move that out of the way. See who we got here. Chelsea, Linwood, Garrett, Audrey, Tamara. Who wants to kick this one off? Chelsea, you gonna start us?
I think Audrey's gonna start us off, and then I'm gonna go to Audrey. You got it?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So for ours, I feel like we're all going to kind of hit some of the same points.
Well, then kind of give us we'll rotate who gets to go first each time. Kind of give us the Reader's Digest condensed version and highlight any things that you think we've missed or that were important to the case as well.
Okay. So, I mean, we definitely agreed with the fact that that the principal's approach chose an arbitrary application of the discipline standard. And then we just basically said that we felt like the principal's course of action, step number 1, needed to be that he needed to meet with Bobby to hear his side of the story. What's going on? Why did you do this? And then maybe even ask him, like, what do you think your punishment should be for cheating? And then we just said our after step 1, step 2 would be that we need to prepare information to meet with the teacher. We need to revisit ethical standards and school policy for how to deal with cheating in the classroom. So just kind of prepare all of that information to make sure that when you go meet with the teacher that you have all the facts lined up that you need to just kind of back the fact that what you're doing is unethical and what you're doing is not school policy. And then step 3, we said that he needs to have a meeting with the teacher. We need to get her input from the situation, find out why is this grade so much higher than everything else. We also need to look at the fact that she has this disproportionate weight for the assignment, and the fact that if another student had cheated on, let's say, an assignment that only counted 5%, that student wouldn't be failing for the year. And so again, that's looking at the fact that one student isn't being held to the same standard. And so in the meeting, also finding out like what was going on with the teacher, but also saying like, hey, we need to revisit your grading policy, and having a conversation with the teacher about changing the grading policy. And then after he met with the teacher and came up with a new grading policy for her, but also came up with a different discipline plan, because we want to make sure that we are punishing the behavior and not punishing his grade. His grade should be a reflection of what he knows and not a reflection of his behavior.
Yeah, exactly. When we looked at that code of conduct, it's just redo the assignment and either do your in-school or out-of-school suspension. There's no part of that says you can fail the kid for the year. He may fail that assignment, but not for the year. My question here is, when I read this earlier today, step 4. You think step 4 is a good idea?
I definitely think there needs to be a meeting with the parents, just to let them know, like, here's what's going to happen. Here's how the issue has been resolved.
But do you think the teacher ought to be a part of that conference? Or is it according to what happens in 3 when you conference with her?
I think it depends on what happens in step 3. I think that if she is someone who is like willing to see her wrongdoings and kind of fix it and go from there and move on, I think it's important that maybe she be a part of that meeting to mend that relationship with the student and the parents.
What's the probability of that happening? Somebody who would be as unreasonable as to pull a stunt like this to begin with, what's the chances that they're going to all of a sudden be reasonable when they go and meet with the parent?
I'm wondering if this person may be reasonable if they know that, hey, if you're not reasonable, there's going to be actions against them.
I don't know.
So
I don't know. I'm just telling you personally, I'm not willing to take that risk.
Yeah.
I mean, crazy is as crazy does. I mean, I've seen it all. I had a situation where we had to suspend the principal. He brought a teacher and teacher assistant in who were having troubles, and he thought because they were in his office that they would both act civilized. So the teacher sat and told what a dirty dog the teacher assistant was. When the teacher assistant had her turn and started telling what a dirty dog the teacher was, the teacher just jumped up and slapped the teacher assistant right out on the floor. And I thought, well, the problem was why'd you bring them in together and put them on the same side of the desk within arm's reach of one another? I mean, they were already pushing and shoving and trying to hit one another down in the classroom. What part of that did you not figure out? So the principal was the one, that was his problem. This would be one of those, you could be repentant and you understand but I would not take the risk of letting this teacher get France in this case. I just wouldn't. I mean, the probability of her doing something crazy is too high. Right. I mean, probability is the basis of all inferential statistics. And so, I mean, what do the numbers tell us? two things we know about data. The least reliable form of data is self-report. The one thing that people overestimate about themselves always is their ability to change. We know that it's hard for people to change, especially adults. If we know those things, the probability for me is too high that she's going to do something crazy with those parents as well and start in on what a little devil that Bobby is at the meeting to justify what she did. The best way to, all these platitudes and metaphors tonight, the best way to get out of the swamp, don't get in it. I mean, the best way to avoid a crisis conflict meeting is don't have it. You take your whipping with his parents, but I would not take the teacher, not me. I'm not going to give her the opportunity to get her last lick in. Not going to do that. Discretion's the better part of valor sometimes. You can't let them get that last lick in. I had an intern at a school in Charlotte, Southwest Quadrant. This kind of thing happened. They thought it was all going to be okay. They had the meeting and the teacher ended up punching the parent. That is correct. She was an intern of ours. She ended up punching the parent. Got suspended from the program for a year. The district suspended her and required her to go to anger management, but she punched the parent right there in the front office. Most certainly did in an elementary school. But I blame the principal. Why did you put them together? You knew this wasn't going to go well. This student had been diddling her all year long, and she overreacted. And so when they got to the meeting, it did not go well. And so this is one of those live and learn kind of things. This is one of those experiences. I don't care how contrite she is when I have the meeting with her and we talk about employee assistance, we talk about an action plan or summative evaluation. I don't care how contrite she is. She's not meeting with that parent. I'm not giving her the opportunity to mess this up. All right. I think as I read through y'all hit all the points when I read it earlier today. You did an excellent job on this one. Is there anything that you'd like to highlight that I've missed?
Can't think of anything that wasn't already discussed. Audrey, can you think of anything that wasn't already discussed? I like the point that you brought up about Dr. Lim, about the injustice of if this was going to happen to Bobby, how many kids are experiencing this where they do not have that type of family support,
especially if there's a language barrier.
Right. So I really like that point of view that you put in. And then also, I think we had something about in there, it was on teacher, about teacher feedback and how we were going to meet with Mrs. Barnes and just give her some feedback about support. But I think that we went over that as well. I don't think there's anything that we didn't already discuss. I think we did bring up some points about possibly bringing in, like, talking about maybe his punishment being, sitting the bench on some games or something like that.
No, can't do that.
But I don't know if that was even allowed. I wanted to hear your thoughts.
No, it's not. You can't do that. That's illegal.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Okay.
Can't do that. It doesn't fall within the tiers. The tiers tell you in your code of conduct what you can do. Eligibility in athletic contest is not in code of conduct. Now you can suspend him if he's suspended from school at the time of the game, that would get him. But you can't just say you're gonna miss so many games. Now, if we know the games are coming, but see, now the games are this summer. The games are this summer outside of the school year. So you can't touch his games. Now, if it were a school, this is a summer league that he would be in, not the school league. So you can't touch him in that. But say, for example, he played on the school team and they had a game Friday. Well, if that's his day of suspension, then he would miss that game. He's not eligible on the day he's suspended. Now you can do that because you didn't say you're out of the game. You said you're suspended from school on Friday. That's one of your days. But you can't go past what the code of conduct allows you to do. That parameters, again, that's capricious if we get outside of those parameters.
Okay. Thank
Now,
you.
one of the things that I wanted to point out in this one that I did like when I read earlier today, I like your team thoughts on Bobby, that he's self-aware of his cheating, and through his punishment, makeup of assignment, and meeting his parents and principals, he is reflecting on his actions and learning the importance of honest work. I like that. That's a great point that y'all make there. This is really about Bobby, isn't it? It's about our students.
We really wanted to focus on the whole student and not just
Right.
academics, and making sure that they take some accountability and hold up the mirror for their decision making as well.
That feeds back into that we're in this together thing.
Teacher
It's
and
not us against them.
Teacher and student. But I did have a question. You made a point about an action plan.
Mm-hmm.
So in this particular instance, would you immediately put that teacher on an action plan for that judgment call, or would it depend on the conversation that you had?
Ex post haste, right now. The action plan would be part of the conference for me. I mean, this isn't intentional. This is, I mean, what worse thing did you do to a kid than exclude him for a whole year? I mean, we don't even do that for kids who discharge firearms. And we got a kid on a class. I mean, this teacher, I mean, this is so over the top. This is so irrational that I worry about this person's mental health. I want them on an action plan immediately. Regardless of whether they agree with me in the conference or not, that's immaterial. But I have a duty and responsibility to protect the students and parents and teachers of this community. I mean, we're talking about somebody here who has, I mean, this is so far outside the bounds of legal or ethical behavior. You can't let this slide. I mean, this one is to be, you know, this is not a gray area one here. I know that looks a little difficult because it's our first time out, but this one was designed to be so over the top as to where you just absolutely, you know, there wouldn't be any doubt as to what you had to do here. And this teacher's behavior is so over the top, illegal, immoral, unethical, that you would have to, I would address it immediately. But that's not just for her. That's for everybody there. That we got to send a message in our community. We will not allow our children to be abused in our school. This is not us against them. This teacher got the opportunity or created the opportunity here to get back at this kid who's probably deviled her all year long. But you got to be bigger than that. That's the ethic of profession. You can't take your shot when you get it. And she did. We do not allow that in our business, period. Your number one job is to protect kids as principal. That's your number one job. I know that you want to be a champion for your teachers and you want to work hard and you want to support them. But we're there for the kids. You know, it's changing your lens from the teacher side of the desk to the administrator side of the desk in terms of who you work for. Work for those kids. Very good. Thank you. I'll close that one out. We've got one here from William and Darlene, Jennifer. Any of these folks here with us tonight that would like to start on this case with us? You got anything else you want to add?
I'm here, but I think we've already covered everything that was on ours.
Yes.
Yeah, it was very good. Again, a very good job. So thank you on that one. So we'll move on. I have one here from Levi, I believe. Yeah, we've got one on. I like this. They did theirs in Google Docs and got it. y'all have anything that y'all would like to add, Levi?
No, I really don't think so. Everybody really hit everything well. I do want to ask a question. I guess it's kind of random. Would it be capricious of the principal if they did this? So let's say that it happened on Monday, and you said that you suspended a student on a game day, so therefore they couldn't participate. Let's say that you were a principal and you really wanted to hit the student where it hurt. That would be capricious. But let's say that it happened on a Monday and you said, well, you've got a full day suspension on Friday, and they're a football player, so then they couldn't play Friday. Would that be legal?
No. I'm going to let Dr. Barnes speak to that one, but no, and she'll tell you why.
So the one thing that we try to do is make sure that we address the issue immediately. So it's the same thing that we have the same issue when it comes to ELGs and ELCs. They want to suspend a kid, but then you can come back and take your test and then you're suspended again. So you should go ahead and just address the issue, give the kid the number of days of suspension, and that should be the end of it. It shouldn't continue on a week later and the kid gets to come to school Tuesday through Thursday, but then Friday he's suspended. No. That would fall under arbitrary more than capricious. I mean, the punishment, the day of suspension, is not outside of the standard, but you arbitrarily decided that you'd serve it on Friday rather than Tuesday, which was the next available day for the suspension. That would fall under the standard of arbitrary, which is illegal. Can't do that. So that violates the standard of arbitrary. The next day that the kid is available to be suspended is the day his suspension starts. Now, if it goes through Friday, it goes through Friday. But you can't say, I'm going to suspend you next week on game day. Although, I mean, the part of the punishment is the immediacy. And so that's part of that is that you can't say, if you're going to suspend Tuesday through Friday, so that if it can't be because he's an athlete and you're trying to keep him from getting into the game. It's got to be, this is the number of days that you're going to give him. And it has to be supported by your code of conduct, has to be within that minimum to maximum range. So what if his punishment is 3 days and the maximum says is 2 days? Well, again, that's capricious. That's too much. You said, well, I'm just going to give him 2 days, but it's going to be Thursday and Friday rather than Tuesday and Wednesday. That's arbitrary. Can't do that either. Okay. So that's why those two standards go together. So to keep people from having the wiggle room to cheat, kind of like you're talking about there. That's why we always say those are the standards that they're a couplet. They go together. That way they cover us on either end. That's a great question. I like that.
I have a question, part of our group, and I'm so sorry if y'all hear a lot of noise. So I'm on duty as an admin.
I see that.
So I'm trying to multitask, and I've only got like 10% on my phone. So my question is, if we put that student in ISS only for that class, how many days can he be in ISS before he gets suspended to do his project over, or give him an alternative assignment?
It's according to what your code of conduct goes back to your code of conduct. It will define how many days of ISS he can do.
Right.
Now you can do a combination but now again, the minimum and maximum, you can't just arbitrarily pick one of those. First time he gets the minimum, second time he can get up to the maximum. You can give him anywhere from the minimum to the maximum the second time, but you can't give him the maximum the first time. That would be a little, then the argument would be for capricious. You gave him too much punishment, even though the handbook said you could. The facts of the case and due process are he's a first-time offender.
Right.
Why would you give him the maximum?
So here at our school, we have to turn in our syllabus.
Yes.
And
I have to turn mine in at Gardner-Webb.
Yes. So we have to do that. And now I don't know if the principal checks it, but as a teacher, I send my syllabus. It's online. I send it. I put it in Google Classroom, and I send it to the parents to sign and bring back. So if on her syllabus it said that assignment was 50% of the grade, and their parents signed it, and
it wouldn't matter. It still wouldn't matter.
Okay.
Still wouldn't matter.
Okay.
It does not support what we learn in this course this semester as we go through. Federal law comes first.
Right.
State law, board policy, best practices, and then teacher input. I mean, that's kind of the way that it goes, or school input. And see,
Sure.
the thing about it is that teacher comes fifth on the line.
Right.
Board policy comes third. Board
Okay.
policy trumps teacher. Even if the parent signed it, it's not legally binding because it violates the policy of the Board of Education.
So if the principal got that syllabus, he should have seen that before anything happened.
That is correct.
Okay.
That's I said, that's on you. Me,
Right.
when I supervised principal, that'd been the first question I went and asked them, how'd this happen?
Right. Exactly.
You know, is this a one-off? The teacher just trumped this thing up on her own, or was this in her syllabus? As you know, just like my blackboard here for this course, I have a syllabus that has the university's grading policy. And then on my course overview page, I have the point totals that you can make and exactly how you get them. So I can't say, well, you know, I think these assignments are worth more than that because you didn't do these particular ones. No.
Right.
That's not the way it
And
works.
it's not a graduation requirement either.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is.
Sorry, I'm all over the place. So.
No, but these are the kinds of questions that I want these cases to generate. This is how you learn. You won't remember, 115C 288. You won't remember that, but maybe you'll remember some of these things that trigger you as you go through. But you've got to use your handbooks, your code of conduct, your disciplinary data reporting manual from the state.
Right.
It trumps the local board policy one because the one DPI made, people say, well, who's DPI? They're just a bunch of, pointy heads in Raleigh. DPI are professional staff that interpret and publish the laws from the General Assembly and policies from the State Board of Education. That's why they trump local board policy, because they are law and policy from the legislature and the State Board of Education.
Okay.
They have a handbook too. Now, they don't get into how many days you get. They leave that to the locals to do. But they define what you can punish for and how the process goes. So we have to learn federal, state, local, teacher, bottom on the podium.
All right.
But at least they're on the totem pole. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else on this case have anything? I read through it. Very good. Absolutely wrong. I love that. Absolutely. Crystal. Where are you, Crystal? I love that. Absolutely wrong.
I'm here. Yeah, she was
excellent job.
Way off base.
Yeah.
And I think I'll just add that as far as the grading scales, that's something that I've been at several different schools, and we do it by the department. Mm-hmm. You set your grading scales, and that way, if say I'm a child of a twin, and we're in two different English classes, there's no question as to why this teacher does it this way or that teacher does it that way when it's consistent with the department.
That is correct. That is correct. And so that's smart. That's a smart way to go about doing that, is have consistency. That's a great idea. Excellent job on this one. Thank you. We had a couple more submissions. Here's the last one. Nicole, I see, is with us. Anything, Nicole, that you'd like to add? This was a very good one. They had a very involved, in-depth one here. They dug deep, did a great job. See, I'm so pleased. See, all of you dug through the law. You looked at policy. You dug through the ethical standards. This case, the underpinning of this one was the law. The violation of due process and arbitrary, capricious, everything. But I'm also glad that just like this one, that you dug in on the ethical piece as well. So, Nicole, you have anything you want to add for us tonight? Let's see if we can unmute her. There you go.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One of the main things that we talked about is immediately we talked about, is this best practice for a teacher to ever assess a student that way? The grade should always be representing a child's understanding of the content and not necessarily anything else. So even if the student in the class just didn't do well on the project, and they got an F on the project because they didn't understand or something else was going on, then they fail the course, but they got 100 on everything else. So that's really not best practice when it comes to actual teaching.
Yay. I applaud.
We also talked about how it really just should not be easy for a student to fail in school, that if we need a child to fail and we want them to repeat the course, you need to have ample documentation to prove that the child really needs to get this course again because they're not grasping the content. So neither of those things are taking place, which makes us automatically say absolutely not. Now we agree that he should receive an F on the assignment or some sort of consequence. However, it is wrong for it to be to that extent. Again, looking at the policy, taking a look at what the school or the county suggest for the consequence, but obviously not anything to that extreme. But we also have Ryan, who has a totally different point of view with experience in a union state, so he wants to go ahead and take over.
Okay.
All right, so my question is, I'm from Wisconsin, and I did all my studies in Wisconsin, and when I did my undergrad and all that stuff, my student teaching, I experienced 2 cases to where the principal had to talk to a union rep before they even talked to, then he made a decision. And I remember asking my principal, why was that? And I remember my principal saying, a union can damage a school. Like, they can get in there and they can just wreak havoc. So in terms of this situation, how much do we have to truly consider a union in this one? Because
not in North or South Carolina, you don't. Now, if you were in Wisconsin, I would teach this case differently in Wisconsin.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. That's what we talked about. Because like I said, my friends are out there still, and there was one case where the admin didn't really follow the union's protocol, and a year later that admin was gone. And that union was to all the board meetings, the reps were just claiming his case. It was gone. So
yeah, it's a different case. I said all those things, and his family and his uncle, that's just window dressing for this case. The heart of this case is arbitrary, capricious, too much punishment, breaking the law, and all those kinds of things. Now, if I had a student, we obviously as an extension of this class, we have some students who are in union states that do this. Now, if my latest one was in Hawaii. I'm mad that the university wouldn't let me make a site visit, but that's another story. But she started out with us in Jacksonville. She's military dependent and got moved to Hawaii. This is a completely different case for her, and she and I talked about that. And we worked through that individually for the state of Hawaii, which is a very strong union state. And you're exactly right. You can't even talk to the teacher without going through the union rep there. But this case being North South Carolina, which are right to work states, that number one, there is no union. There's only teachers associations. They are not, the in-serve rep is not a union. So we don't even have to speak to them if we don't want to. And my suggestion is don't.
Okay, that was our main question, basically, because like I said, when we talked, that was our main focus was like, I'm thinking back to Wisconsin. I'm like, this union guy, we got to be careful about this person. If we're legit.
Yeah, if we were in a union state, but like here for the in-serve people, I mean, and I'm a strong supporter of NCAE, but in cases like this, they've got no place in something like this. This is, you can't be swayed by them with the teacher any more than you can be swayed by the uncle or the superintendent. That's all window dressing in this case. And when you dig down, you see, this is a pretty simple case once you dig down inside. And don't get sidetracked. And that's why we do this case first, is don't get sidetracked by the things that don't matter. Look at law and policy and then ethics. And if you follow those in right to work states, now again, it's a little different practice. And we'd still do the same things, except what we did in terms of the teacher would be different in a union state, but the process would still be the same. We'd start with law, policy, and ethics. But then how we dealt with the teacher, we'd call the union rep and say, this teacher's violated board policy, state policy, federal law. She has deprived this student of their due process rights. Tinker versus Des Moines federal case, Supreme Court of the United States, 1969. She's violated federal law, state law, and local board policy. Where do you want to go? And that's how we would have started that conversation with that union rep. And I would have decided the 3 cases for them, and then off we go. So yeah, that's a great point.
I think when we were looking at this overall, we were looking at the case study. We weren't looking at really North Carolina or a
Yeah.
union. We were looking at the actual case study because honestly, when you first started an hour ago, I said, boy, oh boy, I don't even want to talk because he is going to just shred what I said. But when we were talking about it, we were thinking about it in a different type of mindset.
And so you've got to, each one of these cases, you've got to start with the law, then policy, and then ethics. Look at the facts of the case, not the extra stuff we hang on to distract you.
Well, see, on my slide, I wanted more information. The top of my slide.
More than enough.
But I still wanted some more.
We always want more. Leslie, you're right. We always want more. But
Yeah,
you had more than enough. You had the teacher saying she manipulated this to count more than 50% of the grade. Failed him for the year. All he did was cheat on a class assignment. That's the case right there. You don't really need any more than that. You know that you can't count class assignments more than 10% in North and South Carolina. That even a final exam, state exam, can't count more than 30 and can count as little as 20. You know that. You know this stuff. You got to focus on, the law, policy, and then ethics. And so always start with your federal law, due process. That's why I said this case starts with zero tolerance is illegal. That's federal law. Because 1969, Tinker versus Des Moines, back in my era, Vietnam War protesters on high school campuses, they won their case. They were allowed. They had to be given due process. You couldn't just expel them for doing that. And so that's how this starts with federal law. You get due process. Zero tolerance is illegal. Throwing a kid out of school for a whole year can't be legal.
I'm not seeing where, I didn't see where it said he was thrown out for a whole year. I'm thinking maybe
the year. That's whether you give him the redress of whether the redress of summer school or not. That's a year-long exclusion from school. He cannot progress to his next grade for a whole entire calendar year, 365 days. In the eyes of the law of the state, that is an exclusion. Falls under that definition of an exclusion. Not an expulsion, an exclusion. He's excluded for a whole year, moving on to his next grade. That's state law.
Okay, I didn't understand it to be a whole year.
Yeah,
I was thinking, it was towards.
If he fails his grade, he can't go till next year at this time to the next grade. So failing for the year as a punishment is an exclusion. Nicole made a great point. We don't want to hold kids back, but if we do, it's over academics. Great point Nicole made. Yay. See, this is failing for the year as a disciplinary measure. That means it's an expulsion, that means it's an exclusion. Dr. Barnes this is her line of work. And is she still with us? Yeah, she's still with us. Let me unmute. Dr. Barnes, are you still there? So, let me unmute this. So, if you fail a kid for the year and he sets out for a whole year as a punishment, is that not an exclusion?
Yes, that is an exclusion.
Yes, that is an exclusion. Absolutely. Now, this is what she does for a living. She makes these calls for Charlotte Mecklenburg for the entire district. She's the director that does it. Now, if you failing for the year over his academics, that's not an exclusion. That's over academic reasons. We'd have to have a long list of them, as Nicole said, but we'd have to have documentation as tall as I am in order to do that, but we could. But failing the kid for the year over a disciplinary incident is a year-long exclusion. And so that's why I said, more that there was more information here than there was plenty to make the decision here. You just had to be able to interpret it. Nowhere in no code of conduct in the state of North Carolina does it say that you can exclude a kid a year for cheating. And that's what failing for a year is. And so, You know, these things get pretty in depth. I mean, and there's a lot to know here. Y'all have done exception. Y'all have been the best groups I've had on a first time case by far. Y'all have been the very best. Shauna, yay. Shauna said, yay. Shauna and I go way back. Y'all have done absolutely the best of any group by far. You know, I've had some that, oh my goodness. Not only were they going wrong, they were going wide open wrong. Y'all all got this one right. And I'm not because of great teaching. Y'all must have read the book. But I am so pleased that you did. You've done a tremendous job on this one. And your heart's got to be in the right place. I'm not anti-teacher. I've got one running around here I've been married to for 35 years. I love teachers. I was one. I still am one. I won 4 awards in my career, and 2 of them are Teachers of the Year, and they were a lot more important than that Principal of the Year or any of that other stuff. And so I'm not anti-teacher, but I'm pro-kid. I am pro-kid. This is an abuse of a child. This is unconscionable that you treat. I know he may be a little devil. I know that. I understand that. But I worry that if we do this to Bobby, what do we do to those little kids that whose skin color may not be as white as mine, or they may not be able to speak English? I worry that this leads to abuses of kids who are powerless in our society. I really do. I know that's probably a leap on my part, but I believe that becomes a problem. Anybody have anything tonight for the good of the group before we go? Audrey says.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, the answer to Audrey is yes. And so I'll send you a link when we get done with this one, and we'll just Zoom.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
It is today I was doing an intake on an international teacher, and on her visa they had changed schools. So it said Marlborough County High School, and I'm now having her housed at Blenheim Middle School of Discovery. And she's concerned, am I breaking the visa? Are they going to come get her and haul her back to India if they come to check it?
No.
I'm good.
No, it should be by school district. Just like you're not hired at an individual school, you're hired by the school board for the district. That's the way it works for teachers.
Okay.
Then they assign you to an individual building. So technically her contract is with Marlborough County School Board.
Okay.
So as long as she's in that district, she's good. Doesn't matter which one they assign her to. She's hired by the board, who then allots her wherever. That's one of those quirks of the system, but that's how that works. So as long as she's employed by Marlborough County, she's good to go. Audrey, I'll send you a link and we'll Zoom in just a few minutes. Thank you all. Did we run over time tonight? How bad did we run over time?
20 minutes.
Ooh.
20 minutes.
That's not bad for a case study, though. We'll try to make up some of this next time. We always go over. I love these case studies. I love the interaction that you have. Y'all need to talk more. And we said, well, Dale, you interrupt us all the time. You got to get in there. So next week we'll talk about tort liability. We'll also, which is a short topic intentionally, so we can talk about our portfolios. And we can follow up on the case and talk more if you want to next week. I appreciate you all being with me tonight. I thank you for your scholarship. You're doing great on your evidences, your OMAs. Your case studies were wonderful tonight. You produced better work accordingly than the teacher that I am, so I'm appreciative of that. I'll see y'all next week. Have a good week.
Dr. Lamb.
Yes.
You know we can hold back for like 1 minute?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry.
All right. So I've got Ryan and Nicole and Audrey and Shauna and Chelsea. All right, we're going down.
Yeah. Everyone that's left is the team, basically. It's the Zoom group.
And Audrey.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Audrey.
Okay, Audrey's gone now. Okay.
And then Chelsea. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, friends. I'll leave you to do your team thing.
Awesome. Thank you. Good night.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
All right. So I guess it'll take a minute or two. One thing we're confused on is you said that task 2 is the APTL, or is it the APSL?
2, APTEL.
That's the first one, right?
No.
No. That's the
Second one, where you've developed a professional growth plan.
So I guess that's what we're confused on, because like what we were told the second one was, it was about teacher conditions in the building. We would kind of assess empowerment, stuff like
leadership.
The first one to us was the action plan one.
You did that, but you had to do a professional growth plan in the APTEL. We'll look at it just 1 second here. Let's see.
Okay.
Dr. Bullis told us that it was about teacher leadership, and he wanted to know about teacher empowerment, and he said he didn't want to know anything about student growth in that one.
Well, it's about. He's right. It was about building a professional growth plan, where the idea is to do professional growth with these teachers, where you lead them into professional development of some sort. That's what OMA Task 2 is. And so if we go back and we look at that, let me exit full screen here, so I can get.
Because I think you kept saying if we didn't do it on like scores and growth, then we have to start all over again.
Well, what I meant is if you did it on PBIS or discipline, you're screwed.
Mm-hmm.
We have people who have done that, who have gone in, and instead of following the directions, their idea was the way we'll improve instruction is we'll do better on discipline. Well, that's not true. If you want kids to learn more, you have to teach them more. And so that's the whole point. Now, I don't want to open that, but I will. All right. So if we look at, come on. I hate to get in other people's shells. I don't organize well enough. You go to one of mine.
Before I forget, Dr. Dibble says hello.
Who?
Dr. Dibble.
Oh, Molly.
Yeah.
How's she doing?
She's doing good. She just says say hi to you because I said I was in the class tonight.
Oh, I love Molly.
Yeah.
Love Molly. Dr. Dibble's a great one. She's special.
My cousin Gina Dunn had you. She got her first AP job this year.
Great. Well, have her get in touch with me. That's great news.
Will do.
All right, so let me share my screen now that I've got it up here. All right, so can y'all see my screen now?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So there's 2 types of empowerment. One is empowerment as a classroom leader. The other is empowerment as a school leader. But you got to be empowered in your own classroom. And so you go out and observe your teachers and figure out what they do well and what they don't do well in their classroom. And then in 3, you write a growth plan for them to do better on what they do in their room. That's leading them through an academic, to improve an academic area. So if we went through this and looked at each individual piece of this, conduct a literature reflecting various teacher empowerment and leadership best practices. And again, there's 2 types of teacher leadership. Empowerment as a classroom leader, that'd be like Marzano, best practices. And then Whitaker is about school-wide leadership, school improvement plan, personnel, budget, school improvement team, and teaching other teachers. And so if you follow these prompts, if you've got building efficacy and empowerment, results-oriented professional development, recruitment, those things, if you have followed these outlines, you will have done what we're looking for. Where you get in trouble is you said, well, we think we're not just, we think improving instruction is about making kids behave more.
Mm-mm.
And so we're going to do discipline or PBIS rather than something that addresses academics, better teaching in the classroom. Now, you'll have the opportunity when you get to the CAP PBIS, and kids behaving better. But the APTEL is about improving teaching. The APTEL is about improving staff development for teaching, empowering teachers to be better in their own room. That's why they come first. And what we're trying to do by having you put this in the OMA is to understand that a big part of what you do in your master schedule evolves around your staff development and getting the right people in the right places. And your master schedule has to support your staff development plan and vice versa. And your master schedule and your budget have to support your school improvement plan, which is about improving academics. Your school improvement plan, I mean, we don't have kids behave just for the sake of behaving. The whole notion of having them behave is so they'll do better academically. But we can't just say what we'll do is make them like, you know, our plan this year for improving our test scores is put kids in uniforms. You can't be that stupid and work for me. That's just kids dressed similarly, you know, behaving badly. That makes no sense to me. If you want kids to learn more, you got to teach them more. You got to improve the teaching learning function in your school. Then we can work on the behavior piece if we have to later on. But the heart of what we do is not just making kids behave. The heart of what we do is helping kids go. Is trying to provide conditions where kids will learn. Teaching and learning, that's what we do first. So your APTEL is about finding gap programs to address, you know, your scores in your school, the gaps between your groups in your school. The APTEL was about designing a professional growth plan where teachers are empowered to be better teachers in their room. That's empowerment as a classroom leader, and get the opportunity to maybe teach some other teachers, which is empowering them to be a leader in their school. We want teachers to be leaders because it makes them better teachers. That's the coin of the realm in our business.
Can I email you my paper and have you scroll down and look at my action plan?
I'm sure, you know, if it follows this model, you're fine. Go ahead and put it in the format of your OMA, and I'll give you comments on it. And that way we can do a little tweaking on it if we need to. But just take the descriptors off of this, take the descriptors and the instructions off, and just take your 1, 2, and 3 and feed it into task 2. And trust me, it will all work out. It'll be what we need. As long as you didn't do PBIS or something, or Swiss or something like that, as your instructional growth, you know, as your professional growth plan. And even I can even work with that if you're going to teach the teachers that, if there's an instructional basis for that. But trust me, it'll work.
Yeah, it does. You're right. Now I think about it, it does.
It'll work. I designed these so that they would work. I mean, that's the whole point of this, was we go back and pull this and say, that's why we did that.
Okay.
This needs to factor into our daily schedule, our master schedule. So that's what we're doing here through these tasks. The first 2 is they set us the conditions that we need to have in order to build a master schedule. And a big part of that is your growth plan. Who teaches what well and where, and what we're trying to improve. All that has to feed that school improvement plan. They can't just be random one-off things. They have to be, you know, they have to work together, and, you know, to that pinnacle, that school improvement plan. I mean, once you understand how that works, school's a whole lot easier to administer and to manage, once you understand what you're trying to do every day. And dispel this notion that if kids behave more, they'll score better. That's not true.
No.
That's not true. You know, there was a high school pretty far from where I am now, because I'm at Lake Norman House tonight. There was a school in a district in the western part of the state, had 3 high schools. They'd always scored 75, 65, and 55 as a composite on the state EOCs forever, for 20 years. And it was based on who they got. The one school that scored 75 was at the county seat, had the doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs, had the courthouse and the hospital. And then you had the middle class school and your lower end school in terms of economics. 75, 65, 55. The 65 school hired a new hired a new principal and superintendent, said, I want you to get the scores up. I'm a graduate of that school. You know, within a semester, they scored 85. They went from 65 to 85, made 4 standard deviations in one semester. Didn't change teachers nor students. You think that ought to raise a little concern about maybe cheating? How many standard deviations can you make in 1 year? 2. They made 4. Now, people wanted to go see the miracle. They said, this is just like the stain, the water stain on the wall of baby Jesus. We got to go see this. It's a miracle. How can this school, who's never scored above 65 ever, in one semester go from 65 to 85? We've got to go see the miracle. And they went over to see the miracle. But there was no miracle. Now, the kids were well behaved. They said they'd never seen kids better behaved in a high school. So they were sitting there in the class. They wasn't making a peep. Now, they were just doing their own thing. They were on their phone, talking quietly in small groups. Teacher was, sitting at the front, doing, saw no engagement whatsoever. Scored 85 again at the end of that semester. Did that for 4 semesters in a row, and everybody says it's a miracle. We can't figure it out. When I was high school principal more than 20 years ago, we picked the state test up the morning of the test at a designated location that we were only called and told that morning. We went and picked it up, took it back to school. Teachers were waiting in the cafeteria. This was at 6 o'clock in the morning. They took it back to their rooms, and we started test administration at 6:45 when school started. When the tests were over, I had to have them all back at 1 o'clock to another location that I was only told about later that morning, where they were graded. We went from that to a 2-week testing window where the tests were on the campuses for 2 weeks. What do you suppose might have been happening the first day the test came in? Somebody could have went and got the test, made a photocopy of it, created the study guide, called it a study guide, and handed the test out 2 weeks before the test. So what were those teachers and students? They were the best behaved kids you've ever seen. They were just waiting on the study guide 2 weeks before the test, and they studied the study guide, went from 65 to 85. The part that's kind of, that's strange to me is why they only made 85 when they had the test itself, but, not exactly smart crowd. Well, that all went well and good until Common Core came along. Common Core, national exam. We go back to the rules, pick it up that morning, give it, take it back that same morning. Do you think that they fell back to 75, 65, 55 again? No. Because what had they stopped doing for a number of semesters? Teaching and learning. What was all they wanted the kids to do every day was do what? Behave themselves. Sit there quietly. You can be on your phone. You can talk quietly with your friends. The best behaved high school people had ever seen, they said. They couldn't believe it. So they didn't just drop back down to 65 where they had been before. Oh no, because the teaching and learning had stopped. The behavior was great. Best that we've ever seen. They scored 29. That'd be 2.9. They fell from 85 to 29% on grade level as their composite on the EOC. But they were so well behaved. That's why they were scoring better than somebody said, because they're so well behaved. No, idiot, they've got a copy of the test. Don't be stupid. You can't make 4 standard deviations a game. More than 3 is impossible. I mean, I know that the tails of the curve can never touch the x-axis, but they're so close you can't blow smoke between them. That means you can't make more than 3 standard deviations a game. It's impossible. They made 4 in 1 year. Can't happen unless you cheat. So they cheated. But they blamed it. Their response to the miracle was, look how well behaved our kids are. That's why they're learning so much more.
Did somebody get fired?
Yeah. Oh yeah. You don't score 29 and not get fired. Yeah, that went without saying. I think you kind of understood that. But yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. As they should have been, but should have fired them when the first time when the 85 came in. They should have fired him then. But we got, we're not going to complain about too much gravy on our taters. We didn't fire him on the 85. And that's when you should have fired him. We fired him on the 29, which was an admission of cheating. Basically, they got caught. And so it's just an example. I mean, that's absolutely a true story. It's just an example of just because kids behave don't mean they'll learn more. We've got to do something academically. We've got to put the right programs in place. We got to work our staff and get them prepared to be better teachers. And if we do that, if we kids learn more, if we teach them more, that's the function of school. Now, the behavior piece comes later. But one of the things that we're real careful about, and the state really wants us to stress, is you can't behave your way to great scores in public school or any school. There has to be great teaching, and there has to be a quality staff development plan, and there has to be a quality master schedule that backs that up. That's what we're doing this semester. We all good?
I am. I got to take my dog out, so I'll see you guys all later.
All right. Thank you all. I had a great time tonight. I'll see you next week.
Oh, Nicole has a question.
All right.
She's muted.
I don't know how to unmute.
I got you. Wait a minute. Let me unmute you. All right.
Can you hear me?
You're live.
Okay, so they don't need to stay on for this. If they need to go ahead. I'm just in a different situation because I'm the one that's in a totally new school.
Okay.
Principal isn't giving me any internship hours. So I'm meeting with her again tomorrow, but I just want to make sure that I can figure out exactly all the information that I need to gather on the OMA, and then also talk to her about getting the hours because I'm not getting anything right now.
Well, basically what you need is that front page from Advanced Ed, or your Advanced Ed that talks about your school and community, the background, and then whatever's on your state report card. That's pretty much all you need.
Okay.
A copy of your master schedule that's in your staff handbook.
Right. So I already included all that in the task 1.
And then then what you've got now is you've got all your stuff for task 2 because it's your APTEL that you did last semester. And then for 3, all you need is a copy. Again, you just need your state report card and a copy of your master schedule for 3. That's really all.
APTEL was written based off of a different school.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. So
Doesn't matter. We have that happen all the time.
Okay.
That's why some of mine is from 2015.
That's fine. And Sean and I have already talked about that. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's learning the process.
I should have told you that, Nicole.
Okay.
It's learning the process that's important.
Okay.
Not the content. They're not going to change the master schedule no matter how great it is. We know that. But what I want you to learn is the process of how to build one the right way, not the eeny, meeny, miny, mo, who's my buddy way. I want you to learn that there's a way to do it the right way, legal way, that'll make a difference for teachers and kids in your building. And so it's a process, not the product that I'm interested in.
So then the master schedule that I create, is it based off of my former school and that?
Whichever one you want to do.
Okay.
Whichever you have
The
the
most
material.
information of.
Yeah, exactly. That will allow you. Again, it's about the process, not the product.
Okay, because essentially it's the same county, so when it comes to all the programs are the same, so the mandate.
It's the same, it's potato. I know.
Okay.
That's the way it works. What county are you in?
Guilford County.
Guilford.
Yeah.
Guilford's usually pretty good to work with their interns. The principals are usually pretty good there.
The problem is she's used to having
full-time interns.
Yes, and so
I had a couple. I had one at ACOC. The teacher punched. I had a full-time intern at ACOC Middle School. That
not ACOC anymore.
I know but was it now Allen?
It's something. I think
but I swear to you, I had a full-time intern at ACOC, and I was worried about her because she was kind of slight. I thought one of the kids had punched her. No, one of the teachers punched her. Oh, gosh. Can't make this up. I got to take this call. Anything else?
Yeah, it was just, I just want to make, that's why she doesn't.
Be right with you.
She doesn't
Right.
know what to give me because she's used to someone who doesn't have classroom responsibility.
I know exactly. Yeah, I've had several there. Now I just had 2 there, but both of them were out of the classroom as well. They weren't full-time interns, but they were out of the classroom. And so y'all just have to play it by ear and figure it out.
Okay, and I've told her how I did it at my other school. I told her, I was on the SIT team, I was on the IST team, I did certain things, but I'm just like, she won't just like tell me to go on to those teams. So
Well, just you can show up.
Okay.
Make them tell you to go home.
Okay. Can I, since the CF is kind of like the only other administrative position, can she be an additional site mentor?
Absolutely.
Okay, because I might see if maybe she can be my go-to for some.
We can switch. That's fine.
Okay, even if she's my head site person, but then my CF kind of gives me certain tasks for intern.
That'd be perfect.
Okay, I just wanted to check to make sure before I go and speak to her tomorrow.
All righty.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, Nicole.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Dr. Lamb.
Bye. Bye, Sean. Okay.